Hello, teachers. Session 2 of Numbers. It covers Numbers chapter 11, verses 4 through 17. If you're a believer in Christ, if you know Christ as your Savior, the truth of the matter is that God expects you to be a leader. If by leadership you mean that you have some sense of influence and some responsibility to influence other people. And I think everybody does. In the least sense, we are all called to share the gospel to other people, to lead other people to Christ. That's true. And so no matter what, where the people you're teaching find themselves, they do have a responsibility to lead, and they have a responsibility to influence. And today we see a really incredible picture, I think, that describes the reality that many leaders find themselves in. If you're a leader, especially if you want to be a godly leader, you're going to encounter certain realities, and you might encounter them quickly because leaders think differently as leaders. And we see that we see that here in this particular passage in Numbers chapter 11. The people of Israel are wandering in the desert, and they have a certain reaction, and Moses then has a subsequent reaction, and we'll see all that in today's text. So every believer as a godly leader will encounter three realities, and I think this will be instructive. The first reality is just the reality of people problems. You'll see this in verse 4-9. It says this, "And the mixed multitude that was among them fell a-lusting." The word there for mixed multitude, depending on the dictionary that you look at, there's some that say kind of refer to it as like a rabble. The word pictographically is like a thorn in a mouth, but the idea is like people who are like a corrupting influence among the whole group of people. That's kind of the idea. This a portion of the people that are influencing all the people to grumble and complain. That's kind of what's going on. They fell a-lusting. They had this desire that was creating ungodliness in them. That's what the idea is. So back to 4, the mixed multitude was among them, fell a-lusting. The children of Israel also wept again. That's a strong word. They wept. What were they weeping about? Who shall give us flesh to eat? Where is the beef? Where's the meat? Where we want something to eat that's meat. We remember the fish in which we did eat in Egypt freely. Did they eat freely in Egypt? Were they free in Egypt? They were slaves, weren't they? But we were slaves, but we had plenty of fish. The cucumbers and the melons and the leeks and the onions and the garlic. But now our soul is dried away. There is nothing at all besides this manna before our eyes. Now that's interesting, isn't it? What was the manna? Manna meant, what is it? And it was this bread that came from heaven. It was literally sustaining them. They were living on manna. They were sustained by it. They didn't have to do crops. They didn't have to grow anything. There's a huge multitude crossing, like a whole nation crossing the wilderness, and they were sustained because God was providing this food for them. And the manna was as coriander seed. If you look that up, Google coriander seed, you'll see maybe a little bit idea of what it looked like. And the color thereof was of bdellium. You look that up too, and it's kind of like a amber brownish kind of a color. And when the people went about and gathered it, they ground it in mills or beat it into mortar, baked it in pans, and made cakes of it. And the taste of it was the taste of fresh oil. So they're trying to do everything they could to use whatever manna they could to make whatever kind of product they could, other than just eating it as it showed up. it says, and when the dew fell upon the camp in the night, the manna fell upon it. And so, what are they doing? They're complaining, and they're thinking wrongly about their situation. And before we get too upset at them, before we get too frustrated with them, I think it's we're pretty spoiled too. Like, if my wife makes spaghetti one night and then we have to choose where to go to the restaurant on date night, if she says Olive Garden, I'm going to go, oh, we had spaghetti last night. Now now we want Chinese, or now we want pizza, or now we want a burger, right? Like, the point is, like, we have the same kind of wandering mouths, I guess. We're always looking for some new kind of thing. What variety? We don't want the same thing over and over again. And so on the one hand, we kind of identify with them a little bit. On the other hand, God's miraculously providing for them. They were not having a good life in Egypt. They're desiring slavery, because what went with the melons and the cucumbers and the fish and the leeks and the onions and the garlic was oppression. It was them not being where God wanted them to be. And what they were experiencing and going to the promised land was they were going to a land that was filled with what? Milk and honey, right? They're going to a land of plenty. They're going to go have, as it says later, crops that they didn't plant. Like, they're going to a place that's really good. It was their promised land. But in the meantime, they're just frustrated with the now. They are complaining to the point, it says, literally weeping. They're weeping over their situation, which meant that they were not grateful. It meant that they were unhappy. It meant that they were not okay at some level with Moses, because Moses was the one that led them from a human perspective, and they were kind of questioning God, because God's the one with this plan, with this promise, with this provision, and with that place that they were headed to. And so people, and of which all of us are one, we don't always think right. We need to think right. And when we're thinking like followers, we're thinking only of ourselves. We're thinking selfishly. We're thinking about just what's going on that affects me. But leaders can't think that way. Leaders think about the whole. They think about direction and where we're going. And godly leaders think about, what does God want us to do, and how does God impact me, and how does he impact the people that I'm leading? The people were not acting like leaders. They were acting like selfish individuals, selfish followers. And so Moses encounters the people problems. And by the way, if you're a leader, you will notice the problems. Leaders see problems, and leaders want to do something about it. And that's where we find the second reality. Not only do godly leaders encounter people problems, that they also encounter personal capacity. If you look at verse 10, it says, then Moses heard the people weep throughout their families, every man in the door of his tent. Like, man, everybody, he's literally in whatever tent he's in, and he can hear this weeping around. He's walking through and he hears weeping. What are they weeping over? I miss Egypt. I miss the food, right? Like, I miss the onions and the leeks and the and he's like, and you can just see in the text, it says, and the anger of the Lord was kindled greatly. Moses also was displeased. So, like, who has the heart of God? The leader has the heart of God. Like, Moses has the heart of God here. He hears the people problems that are going on. He hears the people thinking selfishly and not thinking rightly. And he knows that God is angry, and he is himself displeased. And he goes to God. It says, and Moses said unto the Lord, wherefore hast thou afflicted thy servant? And wherefore have I not found favor in thy sight, that thou layest a burden of all this people upon me? I don't know about you, but I have felt that way as a leader. There have been times where I'm like, God, you're giving me a job to do. You want me to influence people to go in a certain direction, and they don't want to go in that direction. And even though it's right, they don't want to do it. And so you're asking me to influence people to do the things that they don't want to do. Why are you giving me a responsibility that seems like an impossible task? He says it, this is kind of funny how he says it. Have I conceived all this people? Like another way of saying this, are these my kids? All these people, he's like looking at this like huge crowd. Are these my kids? Have I begotten them? He says, that thou shouldest say unto me, carry them in thy bosom, as a nursing father beareth the sucking child upon the land which thou swearest under their fathers. I think that's hilarious language. He's saying, it's like I'm a dad carrying a child who wants milk, but I'm a dad. I can't provide the milk. You've given me an impossible task. I think it's kind of funny. And then he makes it more applicable to exactly what they're dealing with. Whence should I have flesh to go give unto all this people? Like, where am I going to get the meat from? Am I going to go hunt and have enough meat to feed all these people? I can't do that. They all want meat. For they weep unto me, saying, give us flesh that we may eat. There's no Kroger meat department I can go get food at, right? I'm not able to bear up all this people alone because it is too heavy for me. And if thou deal thus with me, kill me. I pray thee out of hand. If I have found favor in thy sight, and let me not see my wretchedness. The thing here, personal capacity, that's what Moses is saying here. He's like, there is a huge problem. These people have the wrong attitude. They want something I can't give them. And it's almost, God, like you're asking me to do something I'm not really able to do. And if you're going to leave me here unable to do what you've asked me to do, you might as well kill me. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that Moses's reaction here is exactly the most godly thing, but I do believe that he's encountering something that godly leaders always encounter, and that is there's more ministry that needs to be done than any one person can do. There's more there are more problems to fix than any one person's able to fix. There's more. Alan Taylor, a guy I like a lot, coined this phrase, or at least he's the first one I heard him say, the ministry cow never stays milked. Cows don't stay milked. You milk them one day, they need to milk them another. And if you look out in your city and in mine, there's more people that need Christ than any one person can lead to Christ. There's more discipleship that needs to happen within the walls of our churches than any one person can do. And so we've got a pretty big task ahead of us. And basically Moses finds this capacity and says, what am I going to do? And that's when because he went to God, because he did ask God, he experienced a third reality that godly leaders face, and that's this powerful provision. And it comes from God. You see this in verse 16 and 17. It says, and the Lord said unto Moses, gather unto me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom thou knowest to be the elders of the people, and officers over them. He's essentially saying, go find 70 of the most influential people you've got, and make sure you know them as influential, aged, experienced guys, and officers over them, meaning people that have influence over the people of influence, and bring them unto the tabernacle of the congregation, that they may stand there with thee. What is he saying? Find people of influence to be in the same kind of position, doing the same kind of ministry, other leaders thinking like you. And I will come down and talk with thee there, and I will take of the Spirit which is upon thee, and will put it upon them. And they shall bear the burden of the people with thee, that thou bear it not thyself alone. I love that. God in this moment provides, and he provides, he doesn't immediately provide the meat. The first thing he provides is people to bear the burden of leadership with Moses. And I think that's instructive. If you find yourself in a place where there's too much ministry to do, you need to pray that God would raise up other people to lead with you, to to have the same burden, to see the same problems, and to see themselves as willing to go after God in solving those problems. This is a basic 101 of leadership. You cannot do what you need to do alone. You need to pray the Lord of the harvest to send forth laborers into his harvest. And so I think that's a great idea. And at some level, obviously, God was doing what he could do, what only he could do, and Moses was doing only what he could do. He did get Moses to say, go find 70 people. That meant Moses had a task. His task was go find the people of influence and bring them to God. And I think that's instructive. If you have a Sunday school class and your Sunday school class, you want it to grow, or if you find yourself in a place where there's a lot of needs in your class and you're just trying to get the lesson together, you don't have enough capacity to do the lesson and make visits and follow up with people that have been absent and all of the things, care for the person that's going through a particular season of difficulty in your class. If you're shepherding in that way, you need other people. You can't do it on your own. I mean, you can, but if you only do it yourself, you're going to limit the amount of ministry that needs to be done. Godly leaders pray and ask God, who can help me with this? And then they try to use their influence to influence others to follow the Lord. And so, these are three realities godly leaders run into: people problems and a capacity to fix those problems. Ultimately, know God's the one that does that. And so go to God, ask God for provision and to provide for what's needed. Eventually, God does provide quail, right? But if he just provided the quail, the people wouldn't change either. So God's using these people to influence, and that's a huge deal. I hope that this lesson video helped you think through the lesson that you're going to give. I also hope that it helped you think about your own leadership in your class. Are you a leader? Do you see the problems in your class? There are problems in your class. You know how I know that? There's people in your class. There's also a problem that all of us face, and that is if you're leading the teens, there are teens that aren't in your class that need Jesus. If you're reaching young adults, there are young adults that aren't in your class that you have an opportunity with that you need to reach. There are people that your people know that need to be reached, and so that's a problem that you need to solve. God's the one that solves it, but he uses people to do that. And if you're the only one concerned with it, then you're the only one concerned with it. That's not good. So pray that God would help you solve that problem, and ask for his provision to raise up leaders to help you solve those ministry issues. I hope that helps you. Have a great day.